I still remember the day I signed the final papers. Sitting in that cold, echoing courthouse, the scent of stale coffee and cheap perfume clinging to the air. My lawyer, a thin woman named Grace, squeezed my shoulder as the judge declared my marriage to Adam officially over. Our daughter, Emily, was only 6 at the time. I remember thinking she'd never really understand why her daddy wouldn't be coming home anymore. Adam and I had grown apart in ways I couldn't patch back together. Lies, resentment, little betrayals that piled up like dirty laundry in a house no one bothered to clean anymore. Still, when the gavel fell, my first thought wasn't freedom. It was Emily. Her soft hair, her pink backpack with the unicorn patch, the way she'd wait at the window every evening for Adam's car headlights to turn into the driveway. So when my mother asked me if I'd let Adam see Emily after the divorce, I didn't hesitate. Of course, I told her. He's her father. Mom pursed her lips, pinched a new cigarette between her fingers. You sure, Maggie? He hasn't exactly been a prize husband. That's between him and me, I said, maybe more defensively than I should have. He loves her. He should be in her life. Mom just shrugged, lit her cigarette and said nothing more. But I saw the worry behind her cloud of smoke. The first few weekends went smoothly enough. Adam would pick Emily up on Fridays at 6 and drop her back off by Sunday evening. She'd come home sleepy but smiling, clutching a new stuffed animal or cheap bracelet from the gas station. I tried not to mind, guilt gifts my therapist called them, but they seemed harmless enough. I'd stand at the door, my arms folded tight around my ribs, and watch them drive away in Adam's old Chevy. Sometimes I'd catch him glancing at me through the windshield, that same crooked grin that used to melt me once. Now it just made my skin crawl. But for Emily, I told myself. Always for Emily. One Sunday evening, Emily returned with something different. She held out a brand new tablet, pink case, shiny screen, way too expensive for Adam's paycheck at the hardware store. Daddy said I needed it for games and learning, she chirped. I forced a smile. Honey, that's generous of Daddy. But we didn't talk about this. He said you'd say that. She looked at me, head cocked, as if she was studying my reaction for a hidden answer. I felt a chill run through me then, just a flicker, a moth beating its wings in my chest. I ignored it. I made her dinner, tucked her into bed, told myself it was nothing. Maybe Adam was trying to buy her love to make up for being gone. Stung, but I could live with that. A week later, Emily came home with a dollhouse. A real one. Painted white and robin's egg blue. With tiny furniture and battery-powered lights that glowed behind its miniature windows. She was ecstatic. I was furious. Where did Daddy get the money for this? I asked her, trying to keep my voice calm as I swept her hair behind her ear. He said he saved it all up. He said you wouldn't mind. Her eyes darted down. I could tell she was lying. Or rather, repeating a lie that wasn't hers to carry. That night I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone clutched in my hand. I almost texted him. This has to stop. But my finger hovered over the screen until the battery died in my palm. What was I really afraid of? That Adam would accuse me of being ungrateful? That he'd twist Emily against me? A few more weekends passed. Emily's room filled up with things. Glittery toys, clothes with tags still attached, a bicycle she didn't even know how to ride yet. She started dropping strange phrases into our bedtime talks. Little rehearsed sentences that didn't sound like her at all. Mommy, do you ever get mad at me when no one's looking? I froze. What? Of course not, sweetie. Why would you ask that? She shrugged, eyes fixed on her stuffed rabbit. Daddy says you might. He says sometimes mommies lie. The moth in my chest turned to a hornet then, buzzing angry, looking for a way out. I didn't know where to aim it yet, so I just kissed her forehead, whispered a promise I wasn't sure how to keep. No one's going to take you away from me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the soft creak of the old house, the hum of the refrigerator, Emily's gentle breathing down the hall. My mind replayed every conversation I'd had with Adam since the split. The forced politeness. The strange smiles. The way he always asked, "How's my girl?" with that emphasis that made it feel like I was just the babysitter. I started paying attention then. To every word Emily brought home. To the way her story shifted. To the silences she'd fall into when I asked too many questions. Something was happening behind my back, I just didn't know what yet. One Friday afternoon, when Adam came to pick Emily up, I watched them from the kitchen window. He bent down to buckle her into the car seat. She giggled at something he whispered. Then she turned, looked back at the house, and for just a moment, her little face looked afraid. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a father spoiling his daughter. This was something else. And whatever it was, it had my child's innocence tangled up in it like a fly in a web. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the table long after they drove away. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't call my mother. I just sat there, the glass sweating in my hand, while the sun dipped behind the neighbor's fence and the house grew dark around me. Something had to be done. I just didn't know yet how deep Adam's plan went, or how far he'd push to get what he wanted. The next week I decided I wouldn't wait around wondering anymore. I needed to know what Adam was planting in our daughter's mind and why. On Monday morning, after I dropped Emily off at school, I asked her teacher, Ms. Carter, if we could talk privately. Miss Carter was a kind woman in her early 40s, with thick glasses and a calm voice that somehow made me want to spill my entire life story. We sat in tiny plastic chairs meant for 6-year-olds while the classroom hummed with the chatter of kids putting away their backpacks. I know this might sound strange, I began, my hands clenched together in my lap. But has Emily ever said anything to you about me? About things at home? Miss Carter's brow furrowed slightly. She took off her glasses and polished them with the hem of her cardigan. She's such a sweet girl, she said softly. But now that you mention it, there was something. My chest tightened. What did she say? Miss Carter hesitated, glancing at the closed door behind us. A few days ago during art class, she told me her daddy said to let him know if she ever felt scared at home. I asked her what she meant, and she just went quiet. I closed my eyes. There it was, the truth starting to peek out like weeds through cracked concrete. Has she said anything else? I asked, forcing my voice not to tremble. She mentioned you get angry sometimes. I told her all mommies get angry, that it's normal. She looked relieved, like she was expecting me to react differently. My hands itched to call Adam that instant, to scream at him through the phone for using our daughter like this. But what good would that do? He'd just twist it around, make me look hysterical. That was his gift. Adam could wear innocence like a perfectly pressed shirt, while underneath he was busy stitching lies into every seam. Thank you, Miss Carter, I said. If she says anything else, anything at all, will you let me know? Of course. She placed a warm hand on mine. If you need me to talk to the counselor too, just say the word. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. If Adam was telling Emily to plant seeds about me being a bad mom, then what was his end game? Was he planning to tell Child Protective Services I was unfit? Try to take Emily away and stick me with the blame and the guilt? The next Friday, when Adam came to pick her up, I watched them from the porch this time. I forced myself to smile, to wave, to play the part of the amicable ex-wife. Inside, I was screaming. Have fun, honey. I called. Emily glanced back at me, her little hand pressed to the car window. There it was again, that flicker of doubt in her eyes. Like she wanted to say something but didn't know if she should. When the taillights disappeared down the street, I went inside and grabbed my laptop. I typed in every phrase I could think of: parent manipulating child custody, false abuse allegations, parental alienation. My screen flooded with message boards, horror stories, legal advice. I read until my eyes burned, until every what-if scenario wrapped around my brain like barbed wire. That Sunday, Emily came home with a brand new puppy. A fluffy golden retriever mix with a pink collar and big sad eyes. I felt my stomach drop when she ran inside, squealing. Daddy said we can keep her. Her name is Princess. I stared at the wagging tail, the tiny pink tongue, the mess already forming on my carpet. My head throbbed. Adam hadn't asked me. He hadn't even called. Just handed our daughter a puppy, knowing full well I'd either have to keep it, or be the bad guy who took it away. I knelt down beside Emily, forcing a smile. Sweetie, we have to talk about Princess, okay? Puppies need a lot of care. Did Daddy tell you that? Her eyes welled up instantly. You're not gonna take her back, are you? Daddy said you try. He said you'd ruin it, like you ruin everything. My breath caught in my throat. He said that. I asked softly. She nodded. He said if you loved me, you'd let me keep her. I pulled her close, hugging her tight while she sobbed into my shoulder. Over her little hiccuping breaths, I stared at that puppy. At first, it had seemed like an innocent gift. Now it looked like a Trojan horse sitting in my living room. That night, I cleaned up puppy accidents, made Emily dinner, read her a bedtime story twice just to keep her calm. When she finally drifted off, clutching her new puppy under the covers, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just watch him turn my daughter into a weapon. I needed proof. Real proof, not just my word against his. I picked up my phone and texted Miss Carter. Could we meet with a school counselor this week? It's important. Then I dialed my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy from sleep. Mom, it's me, I whispered. I need your help. Adam's trying something. I think he's trying to take her from me. She didn't ask why I thought that. She just said, I'm coming over in the morning. For the first time in weeks, I felt something solid under my feet. I wasn't alone in this. Adam thought he could pull the strings without me noticing. He'd forgotten one thing. I'd do anything to protect my daughter, even if it meant dragging every last lie of his into the light. My mother showed up the next morning at 7 sharp, banging on the screen door like she owned the place, which, in some ways, she did. After my dad left when I was 10, it was always her and me against the world. She was the kind of woman who could chain smoke half a pack while mowing the lawn and still find the energy to fix dinner from scratch. She stood in my kitchen, arms folded, eyes narrowed at the half-empty coffee pot I'd forgotten to refill. So she said, dragging out the word. Tell me everything. I told her. I told her about the tablet, the dollhouse, the puppy, all the little things that added up to something big and ugly. I told her about Emily's questions at bedtime, her sudden fear of saying the wrong thing. About how Adam was planting stories like landmines, waiting for one to go off under my feet. Mom listened without interrupting, her cigarette bobbing between her fingers, the ash trailing onto my linoleum floor. When I was done, she stubbed it out in my coffee mug and said, "He's setting you up. That bastard's trying to build a case." I didn't argue. I just stared at the mug, at the faint ring of lipstick she'd left on its rim. How do I fight it? I asked. How do I prove what he's doing when it's all whispers in her ear? She tapped the side of her head with one red fingernail. You stay smart. You stay calm. You don't give him anything he can use. And you keep people on your side, teachers, doctors, whoever will listen. I nodded, my hands curled tight around my mug. I hated how powerless I felt. How one man's lies could make my whole life feel like it was built on sand. That afternoon, I picked Emily up from school early so we could meet with the counselor. Miss Carter sat in too, her calm presence grounding me while my daughter swung her legs nervously beside me in the tiny office. The counselor, Mr. Daniels, a gentleman with silver hair and a collection of novelty ties, asked Emily soft questions about school and home. She answered in her usual sweet voice, but every so often her eyes darted to me as if she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Emily, Mr. Daniels said gently, has anyone ever told you to say things about your mom? Maybe things that aren't true. She hesitated, picked at her fingernail. Then she whispered, Daddy said if I told people Mommy was mean, I'd get to live with him forever. My heart cracked right there in that tiny chair. I wanted to grab her and run out of that office and never look back. But instead I squeezed her hand and nodded, keeping my voice steady. Thank you for telling the truth, sweetheart, I said. Mr. Daniels gave me a look that said more than words ever could. He believed me. He typed something into his computer and told me he'd make an official note of our conversation. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That night, after Emily went to sleep, I called Adam. My mother sat across the table from me, arms crossed, glaring at the phone like she could reach through it and slap him herself. Adam answered on the second ring, all smug casualness. Hey, Maggie. What's up? Don't hate me, I snapped, my voice trembling with the effort of staying controlled. I know what you're doing. Doing? He let out a soft laugh, the one that used to make my stomach flutter. Now it made me sick. Maggie, you're gonna have to be more specific. I do a lot of things. Don't play dumb. You're telling Emily to lie about me. You're trying to make it look like I'm unfit so you can get full custody. He didn't deny it. Didn't even pause. I just want what's best for my daughter. Don't you dare, I hissed. Don't you dare stand there and act like this is for her. You want to stop paying child support. You want to punish me for leaving. That's all this is. He laughed again, a low, nasty sound. You always did love your little stories, Maggie. But here's the thing, who's gonna believe you? You're just a bitter ex-wife. And if our daughter says you hit her or yell at her or lock her in her room, well, who's gonna prove otherwise? I felt my mother's hand clamp over mine. She was squeezing so hard it hurt, but I didn't pull away. I have the school on my side now, I said, my voice cold. Keep pushing this and I'll drag you through every court in the state. I'll make sure everyone sees you for what you are. There was a pause on the line. Just for a moment, I thought I heard a crack in his voice, the smallest slip of control. Then he chuckled again. Good luck with that. See you Friday, Maggie. He hung up before I could answer. I slammed the phone onto the table so hard it bounced and clattered to the floor. Mom picked it up for me, placed it back in my hand. We'll get him, she said simply. He's not taking her. Over my dead body. And I believed her. That week, I started documenting everything. Every text, every voicemail, every strange sentence Emily brought home. I spoke with Miss Carter daily. Mr. Daniels promised to file an official report if anything escalated. But deep down, I knew I needed more. I needed proof Adam couldn't talk his way out of, the kind that would stick in court, the kind that couldn't be brushed off as my word against his. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a small voice recorder. On Friday, when Adam came to pick Emily up, I tucked it into her overnight bag. Before she left, I knelt in front of her and brushed her hair back from her face. Sweetheart, I said, my voice gentle. If Daddy talks about Mommy, I want you to keep your bag close, okay? Just keep it with you. It's a special secret for Mommy. Can you do that? She nodded solemnly, clutching her stuffed rabbit in one hand and her puppy's leash in the other. Good girl, I whispered, kissing her forehead. I love you more than anything. As Adam's car disappeared down the street, my stomach twisted with guilt and fear. I hated myself for dragging Emily into this, but I hated him more for forcing my hand. I stood at the window long after they were gone, the empty street stretching out like a promise. One way or another I was going to end this. And this time Adam wouldn't see it coming. All weekend I could barely breathe. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt into my throat. I pictured that tiny recorder hidden inside Emily's overnight bag, pictured Adam finding it, ripping it apart, spinning some fresh lie to twist everything back onto me. But Sunday night came, and Emily came home sleepy, clutching her stuffed rabbit in one arm and the recorder bag in the other. She ran inside with Princess trotting at her heels. Adam stood on the porch, arms crossed, smirking like he knew something I didn't. "Everything go okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He shrugged. "Better than okay. We had a talk, me and my girl. She understands things now." I felt my skin prickle, but I didn't flinch. "Thanks for bringing her back on time." He stepped closer, just enough that I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Careful, Maggie. Wouldn't want any more misunderstandings, would we?" He turned and walked back to his car before I could reply. I stood there watching his taillights fade into the dusk, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug crescents into my palms. Inside, Emily had already flopped on the couch, Princess curled up beside her. I knelt down and brushed the hair from her forehead. "Hey honey, did you keep your special bag close like Mommy asked?" She nodded sleepily. "Uh-huh. Daddy talked to me in the kitchen. He said I shouldn't tell you things anymore. He said if I did, he wouldn't love me as much." My stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd be sick right there on the carpet. But I forced myself to smile. "You did so good, baby. I'm so proud of you." After she fell asleep, I crept into her room and dug the recorder out of her bag. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, plugged in my headphones, and pressed play. Static at first, the muffled rustle of the bag, the scratchy hum of movement. Then Adam's voice, low and smooth, drifting out of the tiny speaker like poison. "Emily, listen to me. I know Mommy tells you not to talk to Daddy about some things. But Daddy's gonna help you, okay? Daddy wants you to live with him forever. Wouldn't that be fun?" A tiny voice, my Emily's voice, so soft it made my chest ache. "But Mommy said." "Mommy lies, sweetheart. Sometimes mommies lie when they're scared. But you're a big girl, aren't you? You know the truth. You know Mommy yells a lot. You know she gets mad when nobody's around. So if anyone asks, you tell them Mommy scares you sometimes. Just sometimes, okay? You don't have to lie. Just tell them you're scared. That's not a lie, is it?" Silence. I could almost hear Emily nodding, the way she does when she's too confused to answer. Adam again, softer now, the snake oil sweetness he used on me back when I still thought he was decent. "If you do this, Daddy promises you can have anything you want. Toys, a puppy, more dolls. Daddy will always love you, but only if you help Daddy. Can you do that, pumpkin?" The recording clicked and hissed as Emily whispered, "Okay, Daddy." I ripped the headphones off, while burning the back of my throat. My own child, my baby being bribed to say I was a monster. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to drive to Adam's house and drag him out into the street by his hair. But I did none of that. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit record again. My voice steady and cold as I spoke into the mic. "This is Maggie Walker. I'm recording this for my lawyer. This is proof that Adam Walker is coercing our daughter, Emily Walker, to lie about abuse in order to get full custody. This recording was made on Sunday, March 3rd. I saved the file twice, once on my phone, once on my laptop. I emailed it to myself, then to my lawyer, Grace, at midnight. For good measure, I sent a copy to my mother too. The next morning, I didn't tell Emily about any of it. I kissed her goodbye at school drop-off like nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. I wasn't scared anymore, I was angry. When I walked into Grace's office later that day, she had already heard the recording. She looked up at me from behind her mountain of paperwork, her face set in that calm, dangerous expression that always made me feel like I was standing beside a coiled snake, except this snake was on my side. "Do you know what you've got here, Maggie?" she asked, tapping her pen against the manila folder that now held every sick word Adam had whispered into our daughter's ear. "Evidence," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You've got his head on a stick. That's what you've got." I didn't smile back. "What do we do now?" Grace leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Now? We let him bury himself. I want you to keep the visits going, don't change a thing. He's going to think you're still scared. He'll get cocky, say more than he should. Meanwhile, I'm going to pull every phone call, every text, every dollar trail that proves he's been planning this for months." I stared at the file, at the cold black letters spelling out my daughter's name. "How long will it take?" "Long enough to crush him legally," Grace said, her tone like steel. "And not a minute longer." I drove home with my window down, the cold March wind whipping my hair across my face. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like prey waiting to be cornered. I felt like a wolf, teeth bared, ready to tear into the throat of the man who thought he could use my child as a pawn. That night, I tucked Emily into bed and lay awake beside her, listening to her soft breaths, the puppy's tiny snores at her feet. I pressed my lips to her temple and whispered into the dark, "He won't win. I swear to you, baby, he won't win." The days that followed felt like walking through fog. Everything looked normal on the outside, but under the surface I could feel it shifting. Emily went to school, brought home crayon drawings of stick figure families and lopsided hearts. Adam's car pulled up every Friday evening like clockwork. He'd stand there on my porch, playing the good father, flashing that lazy grin like none of this was rotting him from the inside out. I kept at my act too. I smiled. I asked how his week was. I let him believe I was still in the dark, a naive ex-wife too busy juggling motherhood and bills to see the trap he thought he'd set. But every time he drove away with Emily buckled in the back seat, my heart hammered against my ribs, counting down the hours until she was safe home again. Grace called me every other night, her voice cool and calm, asking for little details I'd almost forgotten. Did he ever threaten you in texts? Did he ever say he'd take her if you left? Did he ever talk about moving out of state? Yes, yes, and yes. The answers kept piling up in the folder she was building, dates, receipts, text screenshots, the digital recording tucked at the top like a poison cherry. A week after I'd slipped the recorder into Emily's bag, Grace called with a plan. We need one more piece, she said, her voice crisp with that same predator's edge I'd come to rely on. He'll push again, he always does. We need him to say it straight. That he's doing this for the money. He's careful, I said, pacing my kitchen while Emily colored at the table. He doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He'll spin it as protecting her. Grace laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Honey, he's a narcissist. He'll trip over his own lies eventually. Just keep doing what you're doing. Be sweet. Be agreeable. Let him talk. That Friday I did exactly that. When Adam pulled up, I met him at the porch with a soft smile, my arms folded against the March wind. You want to come in for a minute? I asked, forcing my voice into that gentle lilt I knew he liked, the voice that used to make him think I was pliable, easy to bend. He raised an eyebrow. What's this, Maggie? You getting lonely without me? I bit back, the bile rising in my throat, and forced a small laugh. No, just, we never talk. I thought maybe we should. He stepped inside like he owned the place, his eyes sweeping over the living room, the tiny mess of toys by the couch, the puppy dozing in a patch of sun. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching me. What's on your mind? He asked. I kept my expression soft, my shoulders relaxed. Adam, I want what's best for Emily. I don't want us fighting. She's too little for this. He smirked. Funny coming from you. I let the jab slide. Maybe you're right. Maybe she should spend more time with you. But I don't understand why you're trying to say I'm unfit. Why can't we just figure this out like normal people? He pushed off the counter, stepping closer. Too close. I forced myself not to flinch when he brushed a piece of lint from my shoulder, a possessive gesture that made my skin crawl. You never did get it, Maggie. Do you know how much I pay you every month? You think that's fair? You think I should be broke while you sit here playing house with my money? His voice was low, a whisper meant only for me, exactly what I needed. It's not about her? I asked, my voice trembling just enough to sound real. It's about the money? He sneered. Don't act surprised. You knew who I was when you married me. My phone, tucked inside my pocket, recorded every word, the tiny mic catching every syllable, every hiss of contempt that slipped out once he thought he was safe. When Emily came bounding down the hall with her overnight bag, Adam stepped back, the mask snapping back into place. He knelt and zipped her coat, ruffled her hair, gave me that mocking smile over her shoulder. Don't wait up, he said, winking at me like this was some flirty game we'd played before. I didn't say a word. I just watched him go, the door closing behind them with a soft click that felt like the turning of a key in a prison cell. His, not mine. When they were gone, I slipped my phone out of my pocket and replayed the recording, each word slicing deeper than the last. He'd said it plain as day. My child was just a bargaining chip to keep money in his pocket. Nothing more. I sent the file to Grace immediately. 10 minutes later, she called me back, her voice sharp with satisfaction. This is it, Maggie. This is what we needed. I sank onto the couch, my legs trembling so hard I thought they'd give out. Princess climbed onto my lap, warm and soft, her tiny heart thumping against mine. I buried my face in her fur and let myself cry, just for a minute. Not out of fear this time, but out of relief. Out of anger. Out of a raw, jagged hope that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare would end soon. When Emily came home Sunday night, I hugged her so tight she squirmed in my arms. She didn't understand why Mommy was crying and laughing at the same time, why Grandma was in the kitchen pouring wine like it was New Year's Eve. But I knew. Because for the first time since that cold courthouse bench, I knew I was going to win. And Adam had no idea he'd already lost. On Monday morning, I woke up before the sun, the house still wrapped in that hush that only comes before dawn. Emily was curled up beside me in my bed, one arm thrown across Princess's belly, her little face soft and unburdened. For a moment I let myself just watch her, the rise and fall of her chest, the whisper of her breath. I made a silent promise I'd already made 100 times before. You will never know how close you came to being a bargaining chip. At 9 sharp, I sat across from Grace in her office. She had the recording on a thumb drive, a fresh legal pad in front of her covered in notes, arrows, underlines, and angry red ink. She pushed a mug of coffee toward me that I didn't touch. My hands were too busy clenching each other in my lap. "This is how it's going to go," Grace said, her voice crisp and clean like the click of a lock snapping shut. "We file an emergency petition with the family court. We present the recording, the transcript, the previous notes from the school counselor. We request supervised visits only. Pending full investigation. You stay calm. You don't contact him. You let me do the talking." I swallowed hard. What if he tries to take her? What if he shows up before the order goes through? Grace's eyes flicked up, sharp and bright behind her glasses. "Then you call the police. You have a right to protect your child from manipulation and emotional abuse. Do not let him bully you into thinking otherwise." I nodded, but my stomach was a fist of nerves. Adam wasn't going to take this lying down. He'd come at me sideways the same way he always did. Sugar and poison mixed into every word. But now I had a weapon he didn't see coming. And Grace knew how to wield it. We spent 2 hours drafting the emergency petition. I signed my name at the bottom, my pen trembling so badly my signature looked like a stranger's. When it was done, Grace squeezed my shoulder the way she did when the judge finalized my divorce. "You did good, Maggie," she said. "He thinks you're cornered. Let him keep thinking that." I drove straight to the school to pick up Emily early. She bounded out of the classroom, her backpack bouncing behind her, her teacher Miss Carter giving me a knowing nod from across the hall. I'd filled Miss Carter in that morning, told her that if Adam ever showed up unannounced, to stall him, call me, and call the police if she had to. Her eyes had narrowed behind her thick glasses and she just said, "Don't worry, we'll keep her safe." At home, I made Emily macaroni and cheese and sat with her at the kitchen table, pretending I wasn't listening for Adam's car to rumble up the driveway. But he didn't come that night or the next. He didn't call. He didn't text. The silence felt like a storm holding its breath. On Wednesday morning, Grace called to say the petition had gone through. The court date was set for the following week. Adam would be served that day, officially notified that for now he could see Emily only under supervision in a neutral location with a court-appointed monitor. I wondered how he'd take it. I didn't have to wonder long. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Adam stood on the porch, his mouth twisted into that smug half-grin, his shoulders rolled forward like he was about to swagger straight into my living room. "Hey, Maggie," he said, his voice syrup-sweet. "Mind if we talk?" I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me. Emily was inside, safe in her room with Princess and a stack of coloring books. Adam's smile flickered when the door clicked shut, the first crack in the mask. "What's this about some court order?" he asked, his voice slipping into a low hiss. "You trying to play games now?" I kept my hands at my sides so he wouldn't see them shaking. "It's not a game, Adam. I'm protecting Emily." He scoffed, stepped closer, his breath hot and stale. "You think you're gonna win this, huh? You think some stupid judge is gonna believe your sob story over mine?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, at the man I used to share a bed with, a mortgage with, dreams with. Now all I saw was a mask stretched thin over something rotten. He sneered when I stayed silent. "You always were good at playing the victim, Maggie. But let me tell you something, I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp enough to slice him mid-sentence. "You don't talk to me. You talk to my lawyer. You want to see Emily? You'll do it in front of a monitor, exactly like the court says. And if you show up here again without permission, I'll call the police." His nostrils flared. For a second I thought he'd lunge at me right there on my own porch. But he didn't. He leaned in close enough that I could see the vein pulsing at his temple. "This isn't over," he hissed. "No," I said, my voice flat. "It's not. But it will be. And you're not going to like how it ends." I stepped back inside and locked the door behind me, my heart slamming against my ribs. Emily peeked around the corner, her eyes wide. She hadn't heard the words, but she'd felt the tension buzzing through the walls. "It's okay, baby," I said, gathering her into my arms. "Mommy's got it handled." And for the first time, I almost believed myself. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house making my pulse spike. But beneath the fear, there was something else now, a hard, steady ember of rage that refused to die. Adam thought he could outsmart me. He thought he could bend Emily's love into a knife and press it to my throat. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The week before the hearing crawled by in a haze of dread and quiet resolve. Every day I double-checked the locks on the doors, peeked through the blinds whenever a car slowed near the curb. Adam didn't show up again, not at the house, not at Emily's school, but I felt him everywhere, like the hum of a wasp nest just out of sight. Emily asked about him every night. "When can I see Daddy again? Why can't he come inside anymore?" I gave her the same soft answer each time, "Soon, sweetheart. When it's safe. Mommy and Daddy just need some help right now." She nodded, trying so hard to be brave, but some nights I heard her crying into Princess's fur. I sat outside her door, my own tears silent, my back pressed to the cool wood. I wanted so badly to promise her it would all be okay. But I'd learned not to promise what I couldn't control. By Thursday, Grace had built my entire case into a fortress. The school counselor's statement, Ms. Carter's notes, the recordings, even receipts showing Adam's sudden splurges on gifts while he claimed he couldn't make child support payments. He dug his own grave with every dollar he spent on bribes. The morning of the hearing, I dressed Emily in her favorite blue dress. She clutched my hand so tight as we walked through the courthouse doors that my fingers went numb. My mother was there too, standing beside me like an iron wall in a floral blouse. Grace greeted us in the hallway outside the family court, calm, immaculate, her binder clutched to her chest like a blade she couldn't wait to draw. Adam was already inside when we were called in. He sat at his lawyer's side, smirking at me like we were back in our kitchen, arguing about who forgot to do the dishes. But when he saw Grace beside me and my mother's hand firm on my shoulder, his smirk faltered for a second, just a flicker, and I held onto that flicker like a talisman. The judge was a woman named Catherine Moore, middle-aged, no nonsense, her glasses perched halfway down her nose. She skimmed the file in front of her as if she'd already decided half the verdict just by glancing at the highlights. When she looked up at Adam, her expression didn't soften. Grace stood first. She spoke clearly, each word landing like a nail in Adam's coffin. She played the recording aloud, Adam's voice slithering through the room. You know Mommy yells a lot. You know she gets mad when nobody's around. My heart squeezed as I watched Emily's eyes flicker toward her father, confusion battling loyalty on her tiny face. Adam shifted in his seat but didn't look at me, not once. When Grace finished, Adam's lawyer tried to stand and object. He called it, taken out of context. He said it was harmless talk between a father and daughter. The judge cut him off with a raised palm. Mr. Walker, Judge Moore said, her voice sharp as frost. Would you like to explain in your own words why you instructed your minor child to report false claims of abuse? Adam tried to grin, that easy, careless grin that used to smooth over every lie. Your Honor, I was just worried. Maggie's always been high-strung. I thought. You thought you'd coerce your daughter to lie? Judge Moore's voice sliced the room in half. That's what you thought. Adam's lawyer cleared his throat, whispering furiously, but Adam ignored him. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the flicker of rage in his eyes, the same rage I'd seen on the porch behind his grin. The mask slipping. I just want what's best for Emily, he said, his voice dripping with false sorrow. She deserves a stable home. Grace cut in, her tone calm but lethal. Which she already has with her mother. With her teachers and her community. Without the threat of manipulation hanging over her head. I could see Judge Moore's mind was already made. She turned to me, her voice softer. Ms. Walker, do you wish to add anything? I stood, legs trembling so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to stay upright. I looked at Adam first. I wanted him to see I wasn't afraid anymore. You think you know what's best for her? I said, my voice quiet but steady. You don't even know her anymore. You think she's something you can win, a prize, a paycheck. But she's not. She's my daughter. She's not yours to bargain with. I turned to the judge. All I want is for her to be safe. I want her to grow up trusting her parents, not afraid of what lie might come next. That's all. The courtroom was silent for a moment that stretched and stretched, until Emily's tiny voice piped up beside me, too soft for the gallery but loud enough for the front row. Mommy doesn't lie. I felt my mother's hand tighten around my shoulder. Grace's smile flickered at the corner of her mouth. Adam's face went red, blotchy at the cheeks. Judge Moore cleared her throat. Thank you, Ms. Walker. I've heard enough. She spoke for 5 minutes that would shape the rest of my life. She ordered immediate supervised visitation for Adam, no overnight stays, no unsupervised weekends, everything under the eye of a licensed monitor. The recording was added to his permanent record with the family court, along with the counselor's statement. If he pushed this any further, he'd risk full termination of parental rights. Adam's lawyer looked like he might pass out. Adam just sat there, glaring at me, his jaw flexing like he was chewing on all the things he couldn't say in front of a judge. When we stood to leave, Grace leaned in close enough that only I could hear. He'll appeal. He'll whine. But you won today, Maggie. Don't forget that. I nodded, numb but light, so light I thought my knees might give out. My mother's arm slid around my waist, holding me steady. As we stepped out into the hallway, Emily skipped ahead, her blue dress fluttering around her knees. She turned and beamed at me like nothing bad had ever touched her at all. In that moment, I let myself believe it might really be over, that we'd survive the worst of Adam's lies. But I knew Adam too well to think he'd crawl away quietly. And I was ready. After the ruling, the air in my house changed. The tension that had clung to the walls, seeping into every room like mold, began to lift. Emily slept easier, her questions about Daddy trailing off into other things, what color to paint her nails, what game to play with Princess, what she'd be when she grew up. For a week, there was peace, fragile, tentative, but real. I clung to it like a life raft. Grace warned me that Adam might try to find cracks in the order, that men like him never really accept the word no. but I wanted to believe maybe, just maybe, the fight was done. I should have known better. It started with the phone calls. Private numbers. No one on the other end, just breathing, sometimes a chuckle, sometimes nothing at all. I stopped answering, but they came at all hours. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., always when the house was dark and Emily was asleep beside me. The first few nights I'd sit up in bed, clutching my phone, every creak of the floorboards making my pulse thunder in my ears. Then came the notes. Folded pieces of paper tucked under my windshield wiper at work. Slid into the mailbox even though Adam wasn't supposed to come near the property. Don't think this is over. She'll know what you did. You can't keep her from me forever. I called Grace. She told me to document everything. Save the notes, take photos, keep a log of every call, times, dates, what I heard. I did exactly that, my kitchen drawer slowly filling with Adam's empty threat scrawled in that same sloppy handwriting I used to find on love notes stuffed into my coat pocket when we first dated. Emily didn't see the notes. She didn't hear the calls. I made sure of that. But she felt the edge in my voice, the way my eyes flicked to the window when headlights passed too slowly on the street. One Saturday morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table coloring, her head bent over a page of flowers and princesses. She looked up at me, her voice small. "Mommy, is Daddy mad at me?" I froze where I stood, dish towel balled in my hand. "Why would you say that, honey?" She shrugged, twisting a crayon in her fingers. "He used to call me every day when I wasn't with him. Now he doesn't." I crossed the room and knelt beside her, brushing her hair back from her face. "Daddy's not mad at you, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Do you understand?" "Not one bit." She nodded, but I saw the worry still flickering behind her eyes. I hated him for that, more than I ever thought I could hate another human being. 2 nights later, the call stopped, but only because he showed up instead. It was nearly midnight when Princess started barking at the front window. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering as I heard the soft crunch of gravel in the driveway. I slipped out from under Emily's sleeping form, crept to the front room, and pulled back the curtain just enough to see. Adam stood by his car, half hidden by the shadows thrown by the street lamp. He looked up, right at the window, like he could see me behind the glass. He smiled, raised his hand in a small wave. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911 with shaking hands. When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out in a rasp. "My ex-husband is outside my house. He's violating a protective order. Please send someone." It felt like hours, but it was 10 minutes. 10 minutes of him standing there, unmoving, that smug grin flickering on and off as he lit a cigarette, crushed it under his heel, lit another. When the red and blue lights finally washed over the street, he didn't run. He just stood there, arms raised like he was the victim, not the threat. I watched from the window as the officer spoke to him, then turned to the front door to take my statement. Emily slept through it all, thank God. "Do you want to press charges, ma'am?" the older officer asked, his eyes weary under the brim of his hat. "Yes," I said without hesitation. My voice didn't shake. "He doesn't get to scare us anymore." Adam was loaded into the back of the cruiser, still wearing that smile brittle now like it was cracking at the edges. Our eyes met through the glass. For a split second, I thought he'd mouth something, some final threat. But he didn't. He just looked at me like I'd stolen something that was rightfully his. In a way I had. I'd stolen the last illusion that he could control me, bend me, break me if he pushed hard enough. Inside, I sat on the couch until the sun started to climb over the roofs across the street. My mother arrived with coffee at 6, eyes wide when she saw the police car still idling out front. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me so tight my ribs ached. By the time Emily woke up, there was no trace of him but the tire marks in the gravel and the cold knot in my chest that finally started to loosen. Grace called later that morning. "He's finished himself off," she said, her tone flat but edged with grim satisfaction. "A protective order violation on top of coercion? Any judge worth their robe will see exactly what he is now." I sank into the kitchen chair, exhaustion pulling in my bones. "Is it really over?" Grace's voice softened. "Legally? Not quite. But for him? Maggie, he's done. And you did that." I glanced at Emily, still in her pajamas, feeding Princess bits of toast under the table. She looked up at me and giggled when the puppy licked her fingers. No shadows under her eyes. No fear. Just my little girl, whole, safe, mine. Adam's smile had haunted every corner of this house for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. That morning, for the first time, I did. In the weeks after Adam's last stunt, the house settled back into something that almost felt like normal. The protective order violation sealed what Grace called the final nail. He showed up to the next hearing with a new lawyer, a cheap one this time, the kind who wouldn't look me in the eye when I passed him in the hallway. Adam didn't smile in court this time. He didn't smirk or wink. He sat there staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Grace laid it all out. The recording, the counselor's statement, the school's testimony, the phone logs, the threats, the violation. All of it, piece by piece, a slow, methodical dismantling of the web he'd spun. When it was over, Judge Moore didn't even let him speak. She ruled for fully supervised visits for the foreseeable future. No overnights, no private calls, no gifts without my written approval. And if he so much as stepped 1 foot near my property or Emily's school again unannounced, he'd face jail time for contempt. Adam's lawyer whispered something in his ear when the ruling was read. Adam didn't look at me. He didn't look at Emily, who sat on the bench beside my mother, coloring a picture of a butterfly with a purple crayon. If he'd glanced up for even a second, he would have seen the one thing that might have stopped him years ago, that there was nothing left for him to twist. I'd taken it all back. When we stepped outside the courthouse, Grace hugged me. It was stiff, professional, but I felt how real it was when she pulled back and looked me dead in the eye. You did this, she said. You didn't let him scare you into a corner. You fought back. You saved her. I almost laughed, a small, shaky laugh that felt strange coming out of my chest. I don't feel brave, I admitted. Grace's mouth tugged into a wry smile. That's how you know you are. After that, the paperwork felt almost easy. Supervised visit arrangements, a court liaison who handled the scheduling, so Adam never even called my phone again. I never had to see him at my door. Never had to stand on my porch pretending to smile while my stomach turned inside out. Emily still asked about him sometimes. The first few visits under supervision were stiff and awkward. She'd come home quieter, picking at her food, eyes wide like she was trying to read me for clues about how to feel. I didn't feed her any more fear. I just hugged her when she walked through the door and told her the same thing every time. You are safe. Mommy's got you. In the evenings, I found myself standing in her doorway long after she fell asleep, watching the soft rise and fall of her breathing. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Adam to do something desperate. But weeks passed, then months, and the phone stayed silent. No more late-night calls. No more notes under the windshield. No more shadows under the streetlight. One night, Emily curled up beside me on the couch, princess snoring between us, her tiny body wedged under Emily's knees. Mommy, she asked, voice thick with sleep. Yeah, baby? Are you and Daddy ever gonna live together again? For a moment, my chest squeezed tight. I brushed my fingers through her hair, that fine, soft hair that always smelled faintly of crayons and sunshine. No, sweetheart, I said gently. Mommy and Daddy both love you. But we're better in different houses. She thought about that, brow furrowing like she did when she tried to figure out how the puppy managed to hide treats in her blanket. Okay, she said finally. Then she snuggled closer. I like our house better anyway. I kissed her temple, my throat thick. Me too, I wanted to say. Me too. After she fell asleep, I sat there alone with the puppy curled against my leg. The house was quiet. No shouts, no forced laughter, no phone vibrating in the dark. Just the hum of the fridge, the soft tick of the clock above the stove. I'd spent so long bracing for Adam's next move that I didn't know what to do with the quiet. So I sat in it. I let it fill every corner of me, every room of that house he'd once tried to own through her. He didn't own a single piece of it anymore. Not the chipped paint on the porch steps. Not the smell of coffee in the morning. Not the girl asleep in the room at the end of the hall. People always say you should never keep the door open to the past. I learned that the hard way. I thought I was being kind, reasonable. I thought I was doing what was best for my daughter. Maybe I was for a while. But Adam never came back for her, not really. He came back for control. For power. For a hold he thought he'd always have. He doesn't have it now. If you told me back on that cold day in court when I signed my freedom away that I'd ever feel truly free, I would have laughed. Or cried. But tonight, with my daughter safe in her bed and my world small and warm around me, I finally do. This house is ours. This life is ours. And no one, not even Adam with all his whispered lies and smiling threats, can take that from me again.